Good morning, everyone. Let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. Fernanda Colombari, and I work at the Daphnae department of the University of Padova, where I collaborate with Professor Andrea Battisti. Together, we decided to make this short video lecture to involve the non-academic public, such as students or interested citizens, in one of the aspects of our research work in entomology, the monitoring of insect species harmful to trees and forests. But what is monitoring and why is it important? Monitoring is the first activity that must be carried out to manage a harmful species and consists of a periodic survey done according to specific scientific protocols, that is, following precise criteria to allow the comparison of data collected at different locations and at different time periods. Survey that is done to determine the presence and abundance of a pest insect species in a specific area to be prepared to undertake control measures. How is monitoring performed? For example, by carrying out a visual inspection of all plants or of a sample of them in a given area, or by using different kind of traps activated with different lures, depending on the species there's the need to monitor. Monitoring activities related to harmful species are performed on a regular and constant basis. But to provide to recent and current frames, I mention the European project HOMED, in which we are involved together with other 22 countries, a project that deals with the holistic management of insects and diseases of forest interest. Holistic because it takes into account all the aspects related to management, including monitoring. As second frame, there is the year 2020 that the United Nations in December 2018 declared as the International Year of Plant Health, with the aim of increasing global awareness on how protecting plant health can help end hunger, reduce poverty, protect the environment, and boost economic development, as plants are under constant and increasing threat from pests and diseases which cause every year serious and extensive damage worldwide. Let us now clarify what we mean by the term damage. Undoubtedly, insects with their attacks can cause direct losses of fruit, timber, firewood, all goods supplied by forests. However, forest and tree resources have not only productive functions, but they also provide many other important benefits which, together with a productive function, are called ecosystem services. Some examples of ecosystem services: biodiversity conservation, carbon sequestration, climate regulation, water regulation and conservation, erosion control, poverty reduction, provision of aesthetic, recreational, and spiritual areas. And all these goods and services are provided by plants wherever they are. So the monitoring of harmful species is carried out in urban, rural, and semi-natural contexts. Harmful species can have different origin and provenance. On the one hand, there are native species, also known as indigenous, which are the species naturally occurring in an area where they have existed for years and have evolved, adapting to the specific and predominant ecological conditions of that area. On the other hand, there are alien species, also called non-native, non-indigenous, introduced, or exotic, which are outside their natural range because they have been transported over long distances and introduced into new areas by humans. Alien species are defined invasive when they are able to adapt to the new area and successfully reproduce and spread, causing some kind of damage. Fortunately, insects only occasionally reach levels of population density high enough to cause damage, as they are kept in check by natural control, so called because it occurs without human involvement. Natural control is provided by factors such as temperature, rainfall, availability and quality of food and living space, factors that keep insect populations within certain limits as they can regulate the reproduction and mortality of individuals. But the most significant limiting factors are natural enemies. Many different kinds of organisms belonging to different groups can cause insect mortality. Pathogens such as viruses, bacteria, and fungi, or fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals. However, interestingly, the main natural enemies that feed on insects are other insects, which are traditionally divided into two groups: predators and parasitoids. Predators are generally larger than their prey and are very active. They quickly consume their victims and can kill many prey during their lifetime or only during some stages of it. Parasitoids are smaller than their hosts and are so called because they slowly kill the host, unlike real parasites who have no interest in doing so. Furthermore, parasitoids are particularly effective because they have a tube-like organ used for laying eggs in, on or near the hosts, reaching them even when they are hidden at some depth in a substrate or live in concealed places. The role of natural enemies is so important that the success of alien species in invading new areas is explained by the absence in the new environments of natural enemies able to limit them, a theory known as enemy release hypothesis. Indeed, indigenous natural enemies already present in the invaded environment usually don't exert a significant impact because they have not co-evolved with the newcomers, and thus they are not able to adapt to the new prey or the new host. Considering their great effectiveness, natural enemies can be used to reduce pest populations in order to limit, or possibly to avoid, damage they can cause, and this management practice, involving an active human role, is called biological control. There are three main different strategies of biological control. Conservation biological control is a strategy that aims to help the reproduction, survival, and performance of natural enemies already existing in an area, and it involves avoidance of practices harmful to them, such as the use of pesticides, as well as adoption of practices that benefit them, for instance, preservation of habitats with shelters and food sources. Augmentation biological control is an alternative when naturally occurring enemies are not abundant enough to limit the pest population, and it involves the mass rearing and the regular release of natural enemies into the habitat where the pest occurs. Finally, for the control of alien invasive species, on which, as I told you, the native enemies that are present in the area of introduction have a low impact, classical biological control is applied. Classical biological control is the practice of importing and releasing the most effective natural enemy collected from the natural range of the invasive pest. This approach is thus the intentional introduction of an exotic species for permanent establishment and long-term pest control to an area invaded by the pest. And for this reason, a large number of laws, rules, and regulations apply to export, shipment, import, and release of exotic biological control agents, as the high risk of potential negative non-target effects on local ecosystems after their introduction. Biological control has received a strong impulse in the past decades and especially in recent years, given the serious concern caused by excessive and indiscriminate use of pesticides. As a result, just to give you two examples, the European Union and the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations strongly recommend the use of non-chemical methods of control, and in particular of biological control, to reduce risks to human health and the environment. This renewed and growing interest in biological control is also due to the fact that the number of introductions of alien species has increased continuously worldwide for all groups of organisms, and in particular insects, during the last 200 years, as you can see on these graphs, which show the trend until the year 2000, but unfortunately, introductions have not decreased between 2000 and the present day. But why are there so many invasive species? Because they can arrive through many means thanks to the increase in human mobility and in good and product transportation driven by several factors, including the development of air, sea and land transport, the growth of tourism and business travel, and the intensification and expansion of international trade. Thus, human-mediated activities give alien species the opportunity to travel over long distances and to invade new areas. Certainly, there are very strict controls and effective prevention policies where products, goods, and passengers arrive, and there is a large number of rules, regulations, and international agreements in place to address the problem. But something can escape control efforts, and especially insects can escape controls because of their small size and mobility, the capability to feed on many products and materials, and the fact that many species spend their entire life cycle or the major part of it protected and hidden within the materials and products they colonize. Now, two examples of harmful insects, an invasive alien species and a native species, that we monitor because they are present in our region, the Veneto region of Italy, but they are also widely distributed throughout the European Union, representing a risk to trees and forests. Dryocosmus curifilus is commonly known as Asian chestnut gall wasp because it is a specialist gall maker on all chestnut species and their hybrids. In all the invaded countries, it has proved to be a real pest for chestnut because high and repeated infestation levels strongly reduce fruit and wood production and tree growth. Native to China, after colonizing Japan, Korea, North America, and Nepal, it arrived in Europe and precisely in Italy in 2002, and very soon native natural enemies, mainly parasitoids, demonstrated to be unable to limit the go-maker because they are not synchronized with the host's phenology. Therefore, a classical biological control program was implemented in 2010, introducing Thorimus sinensis, a parasitoid specific to Dryocosmus coryphilus in China. Within 3-5 years of first release, depending on the location, the parasitoid was able to strongly reduce the populations of Dryocosmus coryphilus, resulting in recovering about 50% of yield loss. This species is currently monitored by visual inspection of the chestnut plants, as the insect causes on growing leaves and shoots the formation of galls, which you can see on this slide. Ips typographus, the spruce bark beetle, is instead a native species commonly present in our ecosystems. At low population densities, the bark beetle attacks, digging galleries under the bark, weakened, stressed, and recently dead or felled trees, thus playing an important ecological role. However, if the beetle population increases due to a large number of suitable trees, the insect can mass attack healthy plants, causing widespread damage. This is the reason why, for the management of this species, it's important to ensure the health of spruce stands. Unfortunately, at the end of 2018, there was in our region a catastrophic event, the storm Vaya, which caused millions of spruce trees to fall. To avoid timber losses and to prevent bark beetle outbreaks, prompt silvicultural actions were taken, removing trees damaged or blown down by the strong winds. But timber recovery operations are subject to delay in areas that are steep or difficult to access. For this reason, we set pheromone traps in permanent monitoring sites to estimate the local beetle population. To conclude, I'd like to mention citizen science, a quite new term that means science involving the public. Citizen science is a quickly evolving field, and it is defined as the practice of public participation and collaboration in scientific research projects to increase scientific knowledge. And how can citizens participate and collaborate in these projects? In many different ways: reporting or solving problems, observing and documenting phenomena, collecting data, analyzing results, or transmitting observations and data to professional scientists and scientific institutions. In the citizen science context, non-professional scientists, such as students and citizens, could be also involved in the monitoring activities of harmful insect species we are carrying out. They can help us, for example, to reconstruct the invasion process of alien species present in our environments, setting simple handmade traps in their gardens or on their balconies. But this will be considered in a future lecture. Thank you for your attention.